Тут включено. Окей, супер. Welcome back с кофе-брейка. Сейчас для вас будет выступать Иван Конышев, VP of Engineering и в True Automation IO. Иван один из основателей, архитектор True Automation IO и ряда других успешно работающих технологических проектов. Расскажет нам, как они сделали тестирование на основе Selenium еще мощнее. Поприветствуйте, Иван Конышев.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ivan, and I'm VP of Engineering at True Automation IO. I'm going to tell you how did we manage to supercharge Selenium-based testing with artificial intelligence technologies. But first, who we are. Actually, our parent company is providing automation services for more than 5 years, and most of my fellow co-founders have lots of experience doing automation, some of them more than 10 years. So we know literally every problem related to automation, especially using Selenium. So what are we going to discuss here? So why we decided to create another Selenium-based thing? What problems we are going to solve? Actually, how did we manage to solve that, and what benefits it brings to your daily workflow? And at the end, I will be glad to answer your questions. We wanted to create a technology that will be familiar for most of engineers, companies, teams that are already doing automation, and so they don't need to spend time to learn a new technology, and it should fit into existing workflows and existing continuous integration, continuous delivery workflows without any additional cost. Selenium have been used for more than 10 years, and it's #1 automation framework to go for most companies. And actually, lots of additional frameworks were created on top of it, and lots of teams have tons of code already developed for Selenium and related frameworks. And it's very easy to hire people with Selenium knowledge in the market. So what problems are we going to solve? So how much time does your team spend on looking for locators in their workflow? Like some estimates. A person's probably on 10, 20, 30. Somebody 50? Okay, so it depends on technology, of course, but anyway, everybody familiar with this problem, and you know it can be quite painful. And another thing, okay, you found the good locators, and it works well, but next problem, like something updated. Product is evolving, something changed, so locators are breaking. And teams spend time on maintaining these locators. So how much time does your team usually spend on maintaining locators? I think no answers again. Okay, it can be 10, 20%. From my experience, for different technology, it depends on technology. What are problems related to it? So Selenium uses all jQuery locators like CSS-based locators, XPath locators, and all this stuff. But to find the proper locator that won't going to break during next redeploy, you need to spend a significant amount of time. For some technologies, it's even not possible, like GWT, or it's quite painful if you use, for example, technologies that has generated class names like Webpack. You need to deal with developers, so they need to add data attributes to it, to have a proper locator. But like GWT or old stuff like XJS or even more ancient stuff like JSF, they generate ID. Code is totally generated. You cannot add anything there. And lots of companies using it. It's like Oracle or Salesforce. I'm sorry, it's my first speech, and I'm really okay. Going through all the difficulties, we found the good locators, but in a few weeks we have a new release and it breaks, and like you need to find another locator. So, okay, so how human recognize an element? Obviously, it's content, so it can be text, image, or a set of another elements like inputs. Position of an element in HTML3. A login button can be a part of navigation bar, which usually means a link to a login page, or it can be a part of form, which probably means login with credentials and entered in the form. Color. Okay, we probably can find login button if it's red or green, but it is a little bit more difficult if interface changes and people are used to other color of the button. So other decorations, which means HTML attributes like width, height, or CSS properties. However, some of them are not so meaningful like others. For example, compare border radius or dimensions. So if we take into account all of these factors we mentioned before, we probably can find an element with a pretty good accuracy. But to do this, we need to analyze HTML and CSS content and quickly find an element by given attribute, but also understand the significance of changes done to the element. Button can be slightly moved to other location or change its class name or ID. Most of the cases like React or GWT or whatever. And we should not mix it with other buttons on the page. Another case when page contains two similar inputs or buttons and one of them gets removed, So we need to definitely tell that an element does not exist on the page. So this is when our AI technology goes to help. Our patented algorithm analyzes HTML and CSS trees of your page and analyzes changes done to the page. We trained it using lots of different cases like React applications, GWT applications, PWA apps, and tons of others. Elements are stored in a database as unique footprints referenced by names you choose. This algorithm was created from scratch, and we didn't use existing high-level AI frameworks. And this is done due to difficulties of analyzing text compared to analyzing images and performance requirements. Artificial intelligence is implemented as a node module, but since performance is really critical here, we don't want to wait 5, 10, or even 2 seconds for each element. We use Rust language to implement it due to performance. But how did we manage to inject it in Selenium and minimize efforts required to implement support for any Selenium-based framework, regardless of programming language behind? Okay. Sure. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about how Selenium works internally. Everybody is familiar with WebDriver. This is a service which talks to browser directly using browser internal protocols. There are different WebDrivers for different browsers or such applications like Appium, which implement a WebDriver protocol but talks to mobile device. Selenium Grid also implements a WebDriver protocol but talks to different browsers at the same time. WebDriver protocol is a simple JSON-based HTTP protocol. It was called JSON Wire protocol, but now it's moved under W3C control and it's WebDriver protocol. So I still have this JSON Wire protocol here on slide. Framework or library you usually use for your tests, like Selenium itself, Capybara, or WebDriver.io, are clients that use this protocol to communicate. They implement such commands as element or elements to locate things, or click to click the button. So we need to somehow inject our model in this protocol, keeping compatibility with standard driver things. So we implement our client as an HTTP proxy around the WebDriver and distribute it as a portable node application. When our client is started, it starts a WebDriver defined in your Selenium config, if it's local, or proxy just request a remote WebDriver. All the requests bypass our proxy, except element, and elements request used to locate elements. There are two types of requests, like initial requests when we try to record an element. So we use WebDriver to locate an element webself with initial locator. By the way, it can be, if we use our Chrome extension, it's located by absolute XPath. So we locate it using WebDriver and find an element and write unique footprint of this element with its attributes, CSS attributes, and position entry into database. And another path, it's when we already have element in our database. So our engine finds a location and element in our HTML and gives WebDriver its absolute XPath. It's like 1.1.0 like, to find that element and returns to your client. So we have cloud, so because we have database of elements, and you probably want to share your elements with your team or with your CI server, we use cloud to do that. And this cloud also keeps your element list with screenshots and all that stuff, so you can check it out. So how to add elements, a little bit mentioned that. So you can use your old allocators in your existing code. So you can easily migrate to automation. Or you can use our Chrome extension to quickly select an element. So instead of looking for locators in your source code, you just open our extension, click an element, give a friendly name for it, and then use it by this friendly name in your future tests. So the benefits. You can quickly select an element without going to source code, understanding XPaths and all that stuff. You just click it an extension and that's it. Ability to cover enterprise technology. So you can cover Salesforce, you can cover old Oracle stuff, you can cover like all that stuff done 10 or 20 years ago. Ability to cover modern front-end technologies without like UI developer negotiations. From my experience, that actually doesn't work. Like you have QA team, you have developers use Webpack generates class names, QA team goes to developers and tells them, okay, please put the data attribute here because we need to find this input. They have some negotiations, but like there are tons of like inputs or buttons that lost after that. And like do not maintain your tests anymore. So even if HTML3 changed, like some div added around the page, or some div element, some div added around the element itself, or some widget, we still can find it easily. So what's next? We are working on Recorder, obviously, because we are not recording this XPath or some strange things. We just record our footprints, and it can reliably find an element. We are going to have SCM integration with our cloud, so we can analyze your GitHub code or whatever. And we are going to have test runner, which will quickly run your tests on the cloud. So that's it. Questions?
Questions?
Yeah, sorry about that. It's my really first speech since like 3 years or so. That's all.
Okay, so you told like use our extension. What is the extension or?
So extension is a Chrome extension that
Can you specify the name or how it's called?
True Automation.
It's like true.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Actually, we can, if you're really interested in this, we have booths there on the first floor, and we can schedule a demo for you. So how it works totally.
Can you do like a bit demo, like show us in your computer, like?
Yeah, but after the speech, because I don't have it connected here.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's not my laptop, it's
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
So, sorry, if I would be interested in using this, what would it cost me? And when can I be up and running?
Okay, so we are currently working on pricing model, but generally, currently it's in beta, so it's for free, but in a couple of months we are going to charge for this per seat price.
So if I have an interesting project, I might be able to become a beta user?
Yeah,
Cool.
for sure. You're welcome.
Anybody else?
So I actually wonder, like, I'm currently working as QA automation engineer, and I'm working not with Selenium. So I'm well acquainted with Selenium, of course, but I'm working with Detox, because you know it's for React Native applications. And we have kind of a general practice of adding test IDs by QA engineers in the source code. So, I mean that in our way, that we add a test ID, adding like changing the formatting of page, adding divs, changing the trees won't affect our tests in the way that the element will be found, because it's not found by the tree, but by the test ID itself. Or, for example, it can be found by the text if it's buttons, like some specific buttons with specific names, with specific titles that we are not going to change. And why have you selected exactly the way of such project? I mean, why it's not about, for example, like automated adding of such test IDs or like, such stuff?
So actually, we are not going to change the test code. It's going to be not only test code, it's main source code. Yeah, because it's dangerous, actually, right? And such negotiations, as you mentioned, I also mentioned it in the speech, that there are some developer QA team negotiations to add some IDs or data attributes or whatever. From my experience in different projects, it works, but not in all the cases. So there are lots of cases when developers just forget about this ID, or QA guys forget about this ID, and it adds time. So it adds 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, so like even a day, a week of developer or QA time to actually flow, to workflow.
And what about like CSS locators and not locators that are not about a tree, but about some specific attributes?
Okay, but in lots of cases, you don't have the specific attributes. So in React, you know, you have Webpack, it generates hashed class name, which can be changed when you after redeploy, for example, right? For some ancient technologies like GWT, so GWT generates ID dynamically. not even during deploy. So you open a form, you have input, it have some ID 20, for example. You close the form, you open the form, the same element has ID like 41. So, and it's impossible to add custom IDs in these technologies.
Got it. Thank you.
So, am I right that you created some kind of mapping to the element, right?
We don't touch on elements. We just create a footprint of element and put in our database.
And is this footprint visible to user of your extension, or is just something behind? And
So it's stored in cloud. It's not exposed to user because it's just a JSON. It's just a huge JSON that doesn't make sense to user. It makes sense to our algorithm, right? And for user, we show like when user adds element to database, user can specify a name of this element, friendly name, like let's say login form, colon, login button, for example. And then user can reference to these elements in tests using this name.
okay, thanks.
One question, does it work with some patterns like page objects?
For sure. It works with any frameworks, patterns like Selenium related.
And what happened when, for example, locator has changed? And what happened with code itself? Does it change?
It doesn't change. So instead of Selenium locators, you use TA locators. It's just a special function, and it will still find your element.
And for example, some button has changed its locator, and how I will know about it?
So currently we don't tell about changes to user, but in a couple of next releases probably we will have this, so we will notify users that this element changed slightly and this element changed slightly.
Hello. In terms of test code, as I understand, we need just, you provide just single endpoints that we can type, for example, click to service, which defines your service and name of web element, and it will work for whatever element currently staying.
Oh, sorry, I didn't. Можно на русском?
Да, запросто. Суть. У нас есть single endpoint для локаторов. То есть мы пишем клик, сервис, точка, название элемента, и оно работает. То есть это вот так вот выглядит в тестовом коде? Или...
В тестовом коде просто вокруг локатора добавляется TA в скобочки и наш friendly name вместо локатора.
Ну просто насколько будет painful имплементить это уже в существующем коде, переносить это все, ну и так далее.
Okay, it was a question about, it's quite an important question about implementing this in existing code. So you have existing code with lots of locators, and some of these locators break, and you want to migrate it to draw automation. So what is the pattern? Some locators break. You rewrite these locators with true automation. Not all locators, only these locators. It's the same code, only TA function adds with one argument, which is a friendly name, and that's it. You don't need to change all the locators because we're totally backward compatible to Selenium.
So if I understand it correctly, you basically store the element in your database with a lot of elements, so not just the expat or anything. So what's the added value of the artificial intelligence? What does the IE?
Artificial intelligence, we store footprint. We store footprint with different attributes. And artificial intelligence understands which changes to this element are less significant than others. So if this change is not significant enough, we still find this element. But if you renamed login button to sign up, not sign in to sign up and change functionality, it's totally different button, for example, and we need to understand it, right?
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
So, as I understand, this is cloud, no, a service solution, like not a standalone. This is, and the question is, for example, how important is connection to the internet? For example, as you check every element on the fly when I run the test, for example, and what happens if some internet, for example, for down during my testing session, and what happens in this case?
This is a very good question, and actually, when we did an MVP, we met this issue actually. But after that, what we do when you start, like when your test starts, we sync all the information from cloud to your TA client, and when test finishes, we sync all information back. So internet, you need an internet only on a start test or end of test.
But,
not one test, the whole test suite.
The whole test suite?
Yeah.
Okay.
One more question from my side. What is exactly this footprint that you are pasting to your AE? It's like a set of different, how to say it, like color, name, and all this stuff, or it's more complicated, or?
It's a little bit more complicated. So it also has some information about element location in tree. It's absolute address. Also, it's siblings, like next elements, parent element. And also CSS, some meaningful CSS attributes, not all the CSS attributes, and HTML attributes. And also content.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I have some situation. Let's imagine that a few testers working on the same element and using this element in their tests separately. And if one user renamed this element and second user doesn't know about it, his test will fail, or you have some notifications or something like this.
So currently, till we don't have SCM integration, we cannot find, like, if you name an element, we cannot find all appearances of this name in your code. But when we have when we actually implement SCM integration, it was one of the key things there. When you rename an element, all these references to those elements are get renamed as well.
Any questions? So I guess we finish.
That's it. Okay. Thank you, guys. У нас есть